So it's February 15th. Are you in the doghouse again with your relationship? I'm asking for a friend. Does your spouse's animosity towards you mysteriously spike around this time of year for what seems like no reason? Well, we did it again. We forgot about Valentine's Day. Now I'm a real, what's that guy's name? Caso Bonito? When it comes to romance, no chocolate, no compliments or flowers. We're going to solve this problem the most romantic way possible by putting a data visualization on a dashboard. And I'm of course talking about a rose chart. Let's check it out. I'm Jeff, and this is Off the Charts with Jeff. If you're not familiar with a rose chart, it's a circular distribution that, to be honest, gets criticized for being a bad visualization a lot of times. If your sole purpose behind using one of these is to make an ordinary bar chart look a bit different, you're violating some data visualization best practices. But that being said, there are some reasons you might want to use it. Now, one of the biggest reasons for using this data visualization would be the case where you run a business intelligence learning channel, and you want to show how powerful your BI tool is by allowing you to basically build a chart that isn't provided out of the box using formulas. You might also find a rose chart very helpful when combined with things like polar coordinates, so like a compass, or you want to overlay something like wind direction. These can also be very interesting for periodic data, like average temperature, where you want to actually be able to see the seasons as well grouped together. And other things like personality tests, where patterns displayed by these sorts of visualizations can be useful to group people together. Finally, there's emotion. And I don't think that people consider emotion enough when doing data visualization. Sometimes the right visualization is simply what's right for you. And some variety might help your users spend more time on your reports by connecting with them on an excitement or an emotional point of view. This stuff shouldn't be overlooked. So let's get into building one of these. As I mentioned, building a rose chart is interesting because it's something that can be created using a formula. And I'm basically building a custom visualization for you. Let's go. To build this chart type, we're going to use something called a radar range chart. This chart type works by allowing us to determine the start and end for each data point. And this is basically just the length of the bar if you think of it like a bar chart. Then we just have to provide an angle for how each of these data points is going to be swept across. And yes, since I'm building my own data visualization, I do have to tell the system how to draw it. To start, let's create a simple metric set with the data that we want to use. And in this case, all we need is a category and a number. So I'm going to show the total suspensions in the NFL by each team. Now, in my limited experience, talking about sports is a great way to apologize for missing Valentine's Day. Hey, it can't get any worse, right? Now, as mentioned before, to create this visualization, we're going to tell the system how to draw it using that radar range chart. If you've been using Dundas BI for a while, you might be asking yourself, why have I never run into this chart type before? Well, this chart type is something that is pretty niche and in terms of use cases, so we don't show it at the top of the toolbar. To find it, make sure that you have your visualization using some kind of chart type, bar, line, pie, whatever. Then you can go to the properties and you'll see it under the series where we can change it here. The next step is to use a series of formulas to allow us to provide the drawing information that I mentioned earlier, like the start and the end and the sweep angle. By the way, if you've never used formulas before, you might want to spend some time to get familiar with them first. I've got a great video on the subject, unironically called Introduction to Formulas in Dundas BI. Do check that out if you haven't. So let's start by adding some quick values that we'll need to use as part of our calculations. In my case, I need a 1 and I need a 0, so nothing very complicated so far. Also, don't worry that the chart looks a bit weird while I'm doing this. It's just that the visualization is only partially set up and it's trying to guess what we want to do with it. So I'll fix it up later. From here, we need 2 more formulas. The first is the sweep angle. So for example, if we have 10 data points, every data point is going to represent 1 unit across the entire radial axis. So the first data point would be drawn from 0 to 1, the next from 1 to 2, 2 to 3, and so on. This sort of setup is going to be pretty easily handled by taking the cumulative total of our 1 that we added before to the data set using that formula. Then I'm just going to subtract 1 so that we start from 0. I'll also name this x1 so it's a little bit more clear what I'm looking at in the data set. Now to get our x2, our other coordinate for this sweep angle, we're just going to take that cumulative total and add a 1 instead. And of course, I'm going to quickly rename this to x2. Now, if you look at the data set being returned, you can see that we have everything that we need. Each team gets a bar or row, and you can see that we've got the height of the bar, the start point, which is our 0, and then the x1, x2, which is going to be where it appears on that angular axis. I'm going to clear out any series that this chart has generated while I was creating the data set, as I only want 1, and I'm also going to add a quick border to each. Then let's just jump into the visualization tab of the metric set. Range start, this is our bar height. We'll start from 0, and we'll go to the number of games each team has received a suspension on. Our angle, we'll use our x1 and x2 that we calculated. Now that's it. We have our rows chart. Now while we're in here, we might also want to set the color based on the total games suspended, and any further customization will be up to you. Now from a best practices point of view, there is one more thing you need to do to finalize this chart type. Add a rectangle to the screen, and let's set a color. Also, roses need water and dirt to survive, so we better get this thing potted before it wilts. Perfect. I hope this has shown you some of the power when it comes to advanced customizations for your visualizations. I think this stuff is really cool that you can do this. That's all for now, and thanks for watching.